Millia Islamia and INSEE. Jamia Millia Islamia is a third-ranked best university in India as per the NIRF 2022, and it is also accredited with NAC A++ grade. So let me briefly introduce the Department of Economics. Department of Economics is one of the oldest department in the Faculty of Social Sciences that was established in 1971-72. Department has completed 50 years of its glorious existence, that is Golden Jubilee. And we have celebrated the Golden Jubilee in 2022 with much zeal and enthusiasm. Several academic programs such as workshops, seminars and conferences, special lectures, etc. were organized as a part of Golden Jubilee celebrations. The department offers various programs such as PhD, MA Economics, MSc Banking and Financial Analytics, and BA Honors Economics. Teaching and research in the area of environment has been close to our heart. From 2000 onwards, we have introduced the papers in papers of environmental economics at both PG and UG. And recognizing the importance of the department, UGC has granted us SAP DRS1 with 20 lakh grants, and again SAP DRS2 with 60 lakh. And as the time is very short, I would like to stop my speech, and I once again welcome all the panelists, moderator and co-chair. It is a great pleasure for me to welcome you all to the Department of Economics, although virtually. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Idian. Without taking any more time, may I request the co-chair, Dr. Nilanjan Ghosh, the President of Indian Society for Ecological Economics, to say a few words. Over to you, Nilanjan.
Thank you, Nandan. Let me welcome all of you present in the screen to this INSEE and Department of Economics Jamia Millia Islamia University event on demand-side solutions for mitigating climate change on occasion of the World Environment Day. It gives me immense pleasure that the two institutions are collaborating, and yet again, after a successful capacity building workshop on research and writing last activity year. Now, this online panel discussion entails a discussion by the IPCC authors. To face the truth, it is our unbridled development ambitions that have placed the natural ecosystem and human civilization as such in peril. And in the process, it has affected human well-being, life on planet, and livelihoods. And that's precisely why I often keep on reiterating that climate change is a developmental problem and not merely an environmental problem. It begins with development, finally affects gets through the environmental channel, and keeps on affecting the various developmental parameters in the medium and the long term. The question is, can we alter our lifestyles to meet the needs of the future that otherwise seem spurious? Research on climate change mitigation as such aims to focus on supply-side technology solutions. A better understanding of demand-side solutions is missing. And this makes it even more imperative. Rather, there is an utmost need for a transdisciplinary approach to identify the demand-side climate solutions, investigate their mitigation potential, detail policy measures, and assess their implications for well-being. Now, interestingly, while demand-side solutions for mitigating climate change often include strategies targeting technology choices, consumption, behavior, lifestyles, and so on and so forth, the same is also embedded in the Indian Prime Minister Modi's call for lifestyle for environment, or LIFE, at COP26, which happened in Glasgow on November 2021, calling upon the global community of individuals and institutions to drive LIFE, or lifestyle for environment, as an international mass movement to protect and preserve the environment. Quite naturally, this calls for collective action. Now, there have been talks about the intersections between LIFE and SDGs, and it has been contended that the principles of LIFE are embedded in the SDGs. So LIFE is therefore about mitigation, of course, as you emit less in a more environment-friendly lifestyle. At the same time, one can interpret LIFE as adaptation, as one needs to adapt to a new lifestyle. Now, at the INSEE, or the Indian Society for Ecological Economics, through its various convenings and publications, especially our journal, the Ecological Economy and Society, the INSEE journal, we have been attempting to contribute to this endeavor through a better understanding of the nature, society, economy interface. Now, INSEE aims to further the cause of sustainable development by providing a forum like this one for continuous dialogue among scholars, practitioners, policy analysts, working at the interface of the economy, society, and the ecosystem. And in that sense, the society has been seeking all through, in fact, ever since its existence, its inception, seeks to fulfill the felt need for a catalytic agent and a platform that would facilitate interaction between scholars from various disciplines, economics and other social sciences, and ecological and other natural sciences. So it strives to promote a new thinking and a better understanding on a range of issues of Indian interest, interests of the global South, and interests of the globe as such as institutions and instruments for natural resource management, energy analysis and policy, environment and trade, valuation and accounting of ecosystem functions and services, climate change and global commons. And this is where this event today falls in the ambit of intervention of the society that strives to make ecological economics as a discipline standing on its own feet through the creation of a transdisciplinary framework. Now, given the environment development dynamics of the demand-side solutions, also intending nature-based solutions, it is hoped that this is a continuation of collaboration of INSEE with sensitive institutions like the Department of Economics at Jamia. Let me yet again thank my co-chair, Professor Ashraf Ilian, for agreeing to collaborate with us, my dynamic friend, Professor Nandan Nawn, for pulling this off, and ever-energetic human dynamo, Professor Joyce Roy, for organizing this panel at a very short notice. The brilliant speakers of today for agreeing to be a part of this event, especially Professor Leela Niamid and Dr. Akimoto-san. Unfortunately, we will be missing Professor Dina precisely because of unavoidable circumstances. I am eagerly waiting to listen to the deliberations. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for assembling here today.
Thank you, Nilanjan, for that brilliant introduction and also providing the context and placing INSEE in this whole debate. Before I hand over the mic to the moderator, Professor Joyce Roy, three things for everybody is that if you want to pose questions, please use the chat box. At the end of the panel discussion, I and Professor Joyce Roy, we will select some questions and pose it to the panelists. Second is that at the end of the discussion and also the Q&A, I would request all those attendees to open the camera for a group photograph. Without much further ado, I will hand it over to Professor Joyce Roy, who incidentally is an associate editor in the Ecological Economics Society, the INSEE journal, like me, and INSEE has been a great beneficiary of Professor Roy's association with IPCC. I remember in Kila conference that happened about 6 years ago, Joyce Rudy had organized another IPCC panel then with a different assessment report. Thank you, Joyce Rudy, for Nilanjan. Thank you, Joyce Rudy, for agreeing to moderate and organize this particular panel at such short notice. I will stop myself and over to you, Joyce Rudy.
Thank you very much, my dear friends. Nandan and Nilanjan was actually my student. And then I also thank Jamia Millia University and INSEE for organizing this webinar and for giving IPCC authors to present their assessment-based findings. And sixth assessment cycle of IPCC came to an end with publication of the synthesis report in April 2023. The very clear message from IPCC's sixth assessment is that unless there are immediate and deep emissions reductions across all sectors, 1.5 degrees Celsius is beyond reach. And each country submitted prior to COP26 nationally determined contributions, which says who will reduce how much. IPCC assessment shows even if all the countries delivered their pledges, warming will exceed 1.5 degree. And it will make it harder even to limit warming after 2030 to below 2 degrees Celsius. So the question is, what are the possible future pathways of development? As Nilanjan has said, this is a developmental challenge, which can still help in managing 1.5 degrees Celsius stabilization goal to avoid worse impacts of climate change. Let me share my slide. Hopefully everything works. Okay. So what we are trying to show here is that what it shows is that in IPCC special report on 1.5 degrees Celsius warming over pre-industrial level, for the first time, one of the, which is P1 here, the left-hand side most, so P1 pathway, which is showing how the emission need to go down from early 2000 to by the end of the century. So if you look into this, so there are 4 possible illustrative pathways which have been shown, which shows that if we follow P1 pathway, which is our interest today, P1 pathway, then it shows that without deploying much of negative emission technologies, like carbon dioxide removal, etc., in a technological intervention, just by afforestation programs, we can manage 1.5 degrees Celsius stabilization. But what it needs is that there needs to be reduction in the demand for energy and material through social innovation, technological innovation, business model innovation, so that the well-being of, especially in the global south, do not decrease, rather it increases, but also we can manage the emission in a much better way, which helps in realizing the stabilization goal of 1.5 degree. So what it shows is that this gave us a confidence in 1.5 degree report that it is possible to, I mean, it's feasible and technically feasible also to achieve this low emission pathway. And also what we tried to show was that by this figure, what we tried to show in 1.5 report was that actually, if you look into the energy demand side, so here are 3 things we are showing: energy supply side measures, demand side measures, and land-based measures. If we look into the demand side measures, what it shows, all blue ones are showing that how much different mitigation options are linked to the positively linked to the sustainable development goals on the left-hand side. So you can see that the blue is more under energy demand scenarios, which means that if energy demand mitigation measures are applied, we can get synergistic advancement of the sustainable development goals as well, compared to the supply side measures where we get many negative options, especially with water resources from the mitigation options. So what it simply shows is that energy demand side measures has multiple benefits, not only climate change mitigation benefit. So with this, we can say that there has been a paradigm shift on the way we think about climate action. For the first time in this IPCC 6 assessment report, there was a full chapter on demand, services, and social aspects of mitigation, which puts well-being of the people at the center while mitigating climate change. And what it shows is that the latest report shows that every sector, there are options available now that can at least halve emissions by 2030 and keep open the possibility of limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. So while assessing the social science literature on what motivates people to take action, it was very clear that people want services to meet their needs for well-being. People do not need coal, oil, steel, cement, etc. per se. but need the services produced by various primary energy sources and materials to meet nutrition need, access to places of job, education, health services, housing services, and so on. So new service provision models, businesses, through technology and infrastructure development, and the behavior change can change the energy and material needs in the society. Now, for the first time, in concrete measurable terms, we could show that at least 40 to 70% of 2050 levels of projected emission can be reduced by working on the demand side without making people worse off in their well-being. And not only well-being dimensions, but also employment generation and many other sustainable development dimensions. This can take away the burden of emission reduction from the supply side sector, energy supply side sector. So what are these options in various sectors and how they have been arrived at will be presented by Dr. Leila Niamir, and Dr. Keigo Akimoto will demonstrate how they are developing a global model by considering various demand side changes which can deliver low energy and material demand without compromising over all human well-being dimensions, which is now becoming popularly named as high with low scenario. That means high well-being with low energy scenario, low emission scenario. Let me make it clear a little more before I hand it over to them that inequity has been in the heart of this IPCC report. And we show that individuals with high socioeconomic status contribute disproportionately to emissions. You can see that we have shown that consumption of top 1% contribute 15%, and consumption of top 10% contribute 37%. And consumption of the bottom 90% of people contribute less than half of the global GHG emissions, to be precise, 48%. So what we are trying to show is that individuals with high economic status contribute disproportionately to emissions and have the highest potential for emission reduction as citizens, investors, consumers, role models, and professionals. Those with high socioeconomic status, high income, and/or high education have the highest capacity to act and bear the highest responsibility. Evidences show that wealthy people have high potential for emission reduction and can become social influencers. The report shows that they are capable of reducing their greenhouse gas emissions by becoming role models for low carbon lifestyle, investing in low carbon businesses, and advocating for stringent climate policies. With these words, I will now hand over to Leila Niamir to present, and then followed by Keigo Akimoto. Thank you very much. Leila.
Thank you so much, Joyshri, and hi everyone. And thank you so much for inviting me for this panel. Super happy to present output of the IPCC on the demand side solutions, basically. You can see my full screen, am I right? Okay, perfect. So I will start in that way that IPCC shows that if we continue as what we planned in 2020 as a planned basically policies, we will reach to 3.2 Celsius degree by 2050, which is something that we don't want to see that. If we want to limit 1.5 degree, we should reach to the peak before 2025 and reduce 43% by 2030. And also, if we want to be around 2 degrees Celsius, it's the same to reach the peak in 2025 and reduce 27% by 2030. So basically, there is a huge potential that we should really reduce our emissions, but how we can do that? There is several ways that always IPCC emphasize, as Joyce perfectly presents, that mostly on the supply side, but we sometimes missing the demand side perspective. In this cycle of the IPCC, for the first time, as Joyce mentioned, we had a dedicated chapter on the demand side and services, and we tried to show that how much demand side options could basically reduce greenhouse gas emissions. What we did in our chapter, basically we looked through the different sectors which is coming from the end users. I mean, the demand sector like a food, industry, transport, and building. And we looked through the literature vastly, about the thousands of the literatures, and we come up with the collection of the about the 500 studies to show that the potential of the reduction of the demand side options. As you can see, we categorize them in three main categories: sociocultural factors, infrastructure design and use, and end-use technology adoption. I will go one by one through each sector and I try to describe, but just here I just would like to show that first we try to show, for example, this light gray bar is a full potential by 2050 if we continue what we are doing right now. So this is based on scenarios that come up from the IEA scenarios and also some IPCC scenarios that shows that, for example, in the food sector, if we continue as what we are doing right now, we will reach to more than 70 gigaton CO2 emission by 2050. And then with these bars, blue bars shows that how sociocultural factors from the demand side could reduce that greenhouse gas emissions. And then the orange ones or red ones shows the infrastructure impact, and the yellow ones shows the end user technology adoption. So I will go one by one and open, but keep reminding color codes because this is repeating. So blue, red, and yellow shows that sociocultural, infrastructure, and technology. So in a food, for example, we show that the highest impact is coming from the shifting toward the balanced and healthy diet, which means that reducing the meat consumption and shifting to the plant-based diet, which is more coming from the sustainable perspective, and avoiding the food waste and overconsumption. This is a huge impact in a reduction of the greenhouse gas emission in food sector. And also we show that choice architecture and information, what I mean about that, for example, bringing more information and awareness to the society by labeling, for example, the food products, and also financial incentives like putting more perspective on a healthy and sustainable diets and waste management to basically try to recycle or basically try to have a food banks to not going through the waste food could influence on the reduction of emissions. In total, our studies, I mean, basically the literature shows that basically these options from the demand side could influence about a 44% reduction by 2050, which means 8 gigaton CO2 equivalent in a food sector. If we go talking about the transport, particularly here, I'm zooming to the land transport, teleworking or telecommuting, which actually we saw it, the impact mostly in the COVID time, that how much that impact of the reduction of the greenhouse gas emissions. And most importantly, shifting to the active mobility. What we mean about that, trying to go through the choosing the walking and cycling mode in a transport, and that actually brings that also we do need a compact city or basically the urban design that basically facilitate this walking and cycling for us. And also from the perspective of the infrastructure, what I can add is the accessibility or a comfort access to the public transport and shared mobility, which now is getting more and more highlight, particularly in developed countries. And as I mentioned, that compact city or urban design also influence to adopt walking and cycling perspective. From the perspective of the technology, we also show that shifting to the electric vehicle, or in general, the vehicle that are more efficient, could reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. And in summary, actually, the transport, land transport shows that with these actually options, we can reach to about 66% of the reduction, which is about 5 gigaton CO2 emission by 2050. If we look through the building sectors, which is coming mostly that here I can say the social practices coming from the energy saving, so that there is a different ways that we can learn from each other. For example, wearing more clothes when it's cold in a building, and also changing our lifestyle and behavior changes. Like, for example, switching off the extra devices that we are not using, or also adjusting the temperature of the households, both from the cooling and heating system, could be one of the options. And the other one actually is also goes to the compact city, and then the urban design, designing the architecture of the basically the buildings, bringing more green facade and basically green areas that bring more cooling system to our cities could impact on that. Another important point in the infrastructure is a sufficiency. Sufficiency means that the rationalization of the living floor space, basically floor space, which is different from the concept from the global north and global south. However, in global north, we should reduce the floor space. In global south, in many cases, we do need to bring the decent living standard or efficient place for people to live for future. From the technology perspective, of course, there is efficient building envelopes and appliances that we can use, and other things would be the shift to renewable energies, like installing the solar PVs would be a prosumers basically for future, or using the clean energy for cooking as another example. Also, in a building, we see that around the 66%, which is about 5.7 gigaton CO2 emission for CO2 by 2050. As you see, all of these is just demand side options, and we will see that there is a huge impact on a reduction of the greenhouse gas emissions. Since Diana couldn't join, I will allow myself to little bit jump deeper to the building sector, which is expertise of the Diana, which actually coming from the studies that we conducted through the EDITS community that Dr. Akimoto going to present about this community. Actually, we are gathering to look through the demand side and low energy demand pathways. And recently, we kind of is impressed, actually, is accepted a paper. We looked through the different building modeling perspective in low energy demand, and we try to keep this social behavior, infrastructure, and technology that I mentioned, and we tried also to find out the linkages between social behavior and technology, social behavior and infrastructure and technology. We looked through the different modeling perspective, and we did a literature review to come up with the solutions or the way that we can look and where is actually the knowledge gaps. Through these studies, we also find out that there is we are behind from the modeling, because there's lots of great topics that could be possible to investigate more and come up with quantitative data on a building reduction, greenhouse gas reduction, particularly looking to the social behavior perspective, how behavior change, how different lifestyle changes could influence on the reduction of the greenhouse gas emission. And another important part is a sufficiency, and also looking at the global north and global south differences through that. My last slide is exactly the same paper that we also not only look through the different categories, we also look through the mega trends, like a new trends that coming from the digitalization, sharing economy, circular economy, and decent living standard. And we try to find out the cross-cutting of these dimensions, and then basically to show that where we are standing from the building modeling on energy demand, and we show that how much potential that we have in a reduction of the emissions in building sectors, and where actually is the gaps, and we need more studies to do. So I think hopefully in a few months you will see this paper, and I will invite you to read through that. I hope that helps for that. Another thing that I want to emphasize, that Joyshri emphasized it perfectly, that the link to the SDGs and well-being. We are saying that these all demand-side options is good to reduction of the emissions, but through the studies we show that that impact on a high level of the well-being of the human. What we did actually, we come up with 17 indicators of the well-being, which is links to the SDGs like food, health, energy, but we also look through the social perspective, like a social protection, participation, social cohesion, and we look through these dimensions and compare to the different options of the demand side, and we try to show that how much they are relevant. As you will see, the darker blues and blues shows that the positive perspective, and with a high confidence that shows that all these options that I've mentioned in the previous slides has a high impact on the human well-being. So basically is a two-side win-win. We are also increasing the well-being of the human, but also reducing the greenhouse gas emissions. One point in this figure that I would like to emphasize, as you will see in the first phase of the first part of the figure, which is mostly linked to the SDGs like health and energy, we will see more output and more correlation between the mitigation options and well-being. However, in a second part, which goes to more social perspective, like a communication, social cohesion, we will have a lots of gap. This not shows that it's not relevant. It actually is very much relevant to the social perspective, but unfortunately, we don't have enough literature on that to prove that. So we also invite scholars and researchers to look through this perspective, and hopefully by next cycle, we can come up with a more detailed information from the second part. And conclusion, I will, this is my usual motto from my PhD study, that every action matters. We shouldn't wait for others to do something, or the government or other organization. As Joyshri also showed in the last figure, that we have different roles in our society as basically the consumer, as a business role model, or as a role model. So we have a different ways of acting through the environment, and we should do one step at least toward mitigating climate change. And I also put it a quote from our synthesis report, that we really do need a rapid and immediate change right now over all sectors to be able to have a sustainable and livable cities for everyone, for all basically, which also goes through the equitable perspective. I will stop here, and thanks a lot for the opportunity.
Thank you, Leila. And let's hear now from Dr. Keigo Akimoto. I just want to say that after IPCC report brings out the new knowledge, the world community starts thinking that how the knowledge gap can be met. And Japan has taken a very, very bold step of bringing all the scientists to work on the demand side solutions together, to talk to each other, meet each other, and then do their research and compare the results and take it forward. And what Dr. Akimoto is doing in his own capacity with his team, that's something he's going to present now.
Yeah, thank you very much for kind introduction. And it is my great honor to be here. So my topic will focus on the development of comprehensive and quantitative global scenarios for high well-being with low resource use, focusing on demand-side measures by using a global energy systems model. We are developing EDIT project is developing not only for quantitative scenario, but also a qualitative scenario. This is a high with low negative scenario. That means the high well-being with low resource uses has developed by Arnold Gruber, Gregory Nemeth, and other EDIT research members. As you can see here, we have three themes. One is decent living standards, the second is innovation, and the third is digitalization. These three factors will induce will be able to reduce the low will be induce the low energy demand society. And this pathway has characteristics on rapid transformation, high feasibility and low risk, and inclusive and human-centered scenarios. Not only for the energy demand, final energy demand, but also our consumptions will be focused in these scenarios, and also focused on by the quantitative scenarios, as I would like to show you later. For the analysis, we adapted DNV 21 plus. It has been developed by Light. This model is a linear programming model, but the world is divided 54 regions. And this model has a lot of technologies, not only in energy supply side, but also energy demand side. So this model can consider heterogeneity across countries, but can analyze the entire energy systems, both in energy supply and energy demand side consistently. So, yeah, so we are now developing the scenarios, and I'd like to show you the preliminary scenario today. But as you can see here, we have several kinds of changes particularly due to digitalization. First one is the ride and car sharing associated with fully autonomous cars. These direct impacts are energy consumption reductions due to ride sharing, but we have also indirect impacts, such as reductions in consumptions of basic materials such as iron, steel, plastic, tire, glass, and concrete due to reductions in number of cars associated with car sharing. And the second one is the virtual meeting and teleworking. Third one is the e-publication, etc. Fourth, recycling and reductions in apparels due to e-commerce and other digitalization. I cannot explain the details due to the time constraints, but we consider the several kinds of reductions in resources, not only in directly energy demand, but also in resources, and therefore the final energy consumption reductions due to the reductions in resources, for example, iron, steel, and cement, etc. And also a fifth, a longer lifetime of buildings due to improvement in city planning associated with the digitalization technologies. And sixth, reductions in food losses due to better demand projections. This is also due to the changes of digitalization. Seventh, adaptive manufacturing, 3D printing for applying aircraft. And also, we also considered reductions in freight shipping services due to reductions in basic materials productions due to the from number 1 to 7. So I'd like to skip the scenario names. So let me show you the final energy consumption for baseline scenarios. Baseline, so this figure shows the additional final energy consumption reductions with negative cost reduction measures due to the improvement, digitalization, and related innovations, and with social changes. So as you can see here, while this is a preliminary result, but while this preliminary study assumes only limited impacts of circular and sharing economies due to digitalization mainly, but significant reductions, which is estimated by around 10% in final energy consumptions are estimated, as you can see here. This is only additional reductions in final energy consumption. And next slide shows GHG emissions in baseline scenarios. The assumed digitalization impacts in end-use sectors on entire GHG emissions are estimated to reduce the emissions by around 7%. And those plus the assumptions on rapid cost reductions in granular technologies and demand flexibilities could reduce the emissions by around 20%, even if limited factors are considered. This is also for B2DS in final energy consumptions. This is also, you can see also our final energy consumption will be reduced by around 25% in B2DS with cheaper carbon prices thanks to the impacts of end-use technological and social innovations. And the final figure shows the final energy consumption per capita by region. As you can see, this figure, the high with low scenarios induce the smaller differences in final energy consumptions per capita across regions. In developed countries, final energy consumptions reductions is large, but in developing countries, those consumptions is gradually induced even under this circular and sharing economy scenarios due to the digitalization. So this is a table for changes in emission reduction cost. The emissions reduction cost can be reduced greatly through the assumed innovations in end-use sector. The affordable cost measures will also help increases in feasibility and achieve multiple SDGs. So let me conclude as follows. LIGHT is developing comprehensive and quantitative scenarios harmonizing narrative high with low scenarios, that mean high well-being with low resource use, with DNA 21 plus model under the EDIT project. And also other research teams within EDIT project are also developing the low energy demand scenarios now. So digitalization and the related innovations with social changes could induce rapid changes in our society, reduce several resources and the embedded energy consumption through circular and sharing economy and achieve cheaper cost for deep emission reduction. It is not easy to estimate comprehensive and quantitative analysis on demand side, having large heterogeneities. However, great potentials in achieving low energy society exist thanks to digitalization and other innovation. Development of comprehensive and quantitative scenarios will help change our societies, I believe. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thanks, Nandan. It is for you now.
Thank you. For the participants, this is a question answer time. So if anybody wants to pose any question before this August panel, you can either put it on the chat box or unmute yourself and then pose the question. And if you don't, I have two questions. So meanwhile, while you may decide to ask questions on the chat box, I have a question to both the panelists. Okay, fine. One question I can see from Firoz. Why don't you say that? Or you want to write it on the chat box? Yeah, please.
It's okay. I can tell it. I'd like to address to Professor Roy. I saw in slides that in future with high efficient electric device, the consumptions or electricity consumptions might be reduced. My question is, what will be the impact of reducing the electricity demand rather than we come up with more solution with the generation side? Because as we go forward, as we see historically, the load basically increases. So instead of focusing on how we can reduce the demand, can we focus what will be the impact if we focus more on the generation sides with more green energy technologies?
Yeah. So basically, this is a good question. This is a basic question which we asked in the IPCC report this time. So if you look into that, if you go for, as Leila was showing in her presentation, that there is a gray bar which says that how much of energy supply sector decarbonization need is. And if you want to do the whole, if you want to put the whole burden on the energy supply side, then you will run out of the materials in the world. You will not have the materials to meet the global demand, because it is not that you can continue ever increasing demand and with wasteful resource, because that is not efficient also. So this is not that you will have resource, so that you cannot only think in terms of, if you want to meet the global demand for electricity, growing demand for electricity by solar and wind, you cannot provide the systems, because you will run out of the materials which are needed for supplying the wind and solar energy. So there are hard limits to resources, so you cannot do that. So you have to reduce the demand. How do you reduce the demand? It's not that you cut the demand right there, right? You make it more efficient. You make your production system more efficient. So you can do production system more efficient and also renewable. But still, what we are saying is that why you will be using still an inefficient car? Why you would still be using an inefficient light bulb or inefficient air conditioning in your home? If you change these demand side appliances, then there will be more employment generation, more economic activity, granular technology development, and very easy uptake by the consumers. Still, you can meet the same service with less electricity. So it will be saving on your pocket also about the cost of electricity to the consumer. So what we are saying is that it is kind of saying that how you make your infrastructure, what kind of policy incentive you give for the granular technology development, so that the demand for the total energy, demand for the electricity reduces, and you have less electricity generation to make, so you need less investment there, and then you decarbonize it easily within the material and the resource limits of the planet. So basically you can't meet that. And then what you are talking about the demand side, it's not only about the appliances, but also you can have the time of use pricing. So your load will shift. It's not that we have a fixed load. It's not that allow people to shift anywhere, anything in the demand, right? You manage it properly. You do the time of use pricing, and then you can shift the load. Intraday load shifting is also possible, which is demand side flexibility you introduce. So what this report tried to show that by looking into the demand side only, 40 to 70% emission reduction possible, and even at a cheaper cost. And that cost estimation we could not do comprehensively in this report, but we think that we will be able to do it more research so that in the next report that can be shown, it is cheaper to do on the demand side compared to on the supply side. And also we showed that on the demand side, if you take action, then your multiple sustainable development goals are also met compared to your supply side. So basically you get both direct benefit and co-benefit, indirect benefit. So if you add them up, it is always more economical and resource efficient to work on the demand side rather than on the supply side. Yes, Nandan.
Yeah. Any other question?
Nandan, you go ahead with your question.
Yeah. So I have this question, and this is to do with the fact that when you think about supply side focused energy reduction policies, we know that which particular sector in the government to look for. For example, if it is to do with improving energy efficiency of, say, sector A, I know that which ministry to look for. Here, when you are looking at demand side matters, the matter comes to question of behavioral matters, and we economists know that how difficult it is for behavioral changes to happen. On the same point of time, when we have to look at particular institution, be it a sector or be it the which government or government which sector, which will be able to take the lead. And we know that huge transaction costs exist in terms of intergovernmental communications, at least in India that exist. So to me, looking at the demand side policies towards improving energy efficiency or whatever, the matters that I see enormous potential, I completely agree with you. But I see the transaction cost in terms of the government action, in terms of which sector, which policy, which particular division, and so on and so forth. I don't know whether your IPCC chapter had looked at this matter. I'll stop here.
Let me just take first, and then I can ask, what is happening in Japan, and also Leila can also say what is happening in EU. So I would say that in our chapter, what we try to do, we actually answered this question. We have a section 5.6, which says what policies have been taken in different countries. So it's not about what can be done. What we tried to do was what has been done in many countries, so that if you communicate these, then you can show that how the decisions can be taken by which ministry, right? So we try to give the options, and so that the governments can take, or decision maker can take an example. I'll just give one example. When Leila was showing the graph, the waterfall diagram, you saw that she mentioned transport, but she also mentioned mobility, right? So the kind of service we are looking into. So if you think of mobility, mobility increases by telecom service as well as transport service, right? So just imagine this event, what you are organizing today. By doing this online, how much of carbon footprint you could reduce, right? This is exactly what we are saying, right? No well-being is lost. Our knowledge is also getting enhanced, but also we could reduce the emission. So well, here it means the telecom sector needs to be targeted, right? So they need to be done. So we are saying that, well, if we are thinking of active transport, it means that we need right biking lane, we need right walking lane, right? So that's something we know which department to go to. So basically we try to look into that like that, right? And then when we are talking about, say, the electricity pricing for encouraging the households, that means we know whom to go to, right? So it's not, we have never given such an in-depth attention to this at all, because it's the lobbying and vested interest of the supply side where profitability is more. That's why that was pushing a kind of political economy. And that political economy keeps us moving to think on the supply side. This has been written in the UNEP gap report also, right? So now I'll not go on now. So I'll ask Akimoto-san if he has something to add, and then Leila.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'd like to add some comments. For example, in Japan, for example, in METI, one division has one responsibility on renewable energies, for example, and the nuclear power example, and the hydrogen power example. This is the energy supply side. One division has each responsibility for the deployment of each technologies. But in end-use sectors, we need great communications across divisions and across sectors. So it is very important, therefore, it is very important to show the comprehensive and quantitative scenarios due to the end use measures with least cost, cheaper cost measures. So therefore, we are developing such a quantitative and qualitative scenarios, and to induce the movement of the government to try to change the policies, particularly focusing on the end-use sectors. Thank you very much.
Leila, would you like to add in 1 minute something?
Yeah, sure. Maybe quickly something I will add that I just want to emphasize in IPCC, both in working group 3, which is the mitigation and synthesis report, we looked through the enabling conditions, how we can basically accelerate this demand side option, as you mentioned, that where we should go, to whom we should talk. And then actually the important things is that is a very context based about the special base. I mean, where we are talking about, in which country, in which location we are talking about. But I can say there is a mutual kind of conditions in between all these things, which I can emphasize on inclusive governance, I mean, multi-level governance, infrastructure design and availability, talking about the finance and investment in a new way of the people changing their behavior, and also the business models. These are things that is very mutual in all these conditions, and particularly collective actions and then social norms that gradually coming. It's really slow, but it's coming and will bring marginal changes in part of the demand side action. So I will invite people to look through it. And also we have a paper coming from the edits out soon that's talking about all these social enablers.
All right. If with the permission of the moderator, we will close the session now.
Yes.
So if we can request, this is a request to all the participants, if you can switch on your camera so that even the panelists would like to see that who are all these people who are there on listening to us. So if you can, as many as possible, so that we can take a group photograph. And then in the process, let me offer a formal vote of thanks on behalf of both Department of Economics Jamia Millia Islamia, as well as Indian Society for Ecological Economics, whose collaboration made this panel discussion on a very important topic, which is to do with demand-side solutions for mitigating climate change possible on World Environment Day. We thank, on behalf of both Department of Economics and INSEE, we thank Professor Joyce Roy for agreeing to moderate and take the lead in organizing it. To Dr. Laila she is from Europe, joining us, along with Dr. Akimoto from Japan joining us. And I agree with Professor Roy that yes, through this digital intervention, we saved many huge amount of carbon emissions in the process. I have taken just one moment. Let me try to do a little bit of better large gallery view so that I can have everybody on the screen. Large gallery. All right. Nilanjan, if you would like to have any last word, please go ahead, because we will soon finish it.
I presume I thanked at the very beginning all the presenters. This has been an exhilarating session, very crisp, to the point, great learnings. And my sincere thanks to you, Nandan. Even my thanks are never going to end for you. And of course, Joyshri, for bringing this up, because otherwise we wouldn't have thought of coming up with this in such a short time. I presume that this deliberation should go on. This is only the beginning, and we should have more sessions like this in close collaboration. This is not merely the Indian Society for Ecological Economics speaking, but essentially the kind of exchange that we are happening with the outside world that makes this platform even more interesting and exhilarating. Thank you all the speakers. Thank you, Akimoto-san. Thank you, Dr. Laila. It's been a fabulous interventions from all of you, including Joyshri. Of course, no words are enough to thank you. As I said, that you are really the human dynamo who has brought this together.
Thank you all. Thank you. Namaskar. Thank you. We'll close the session now. Thank you.
Thank you, Nandan. Thank you.
Thank you all once again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.